Okay everyone, welcome to our new video on the channel. On this video we're going to discuss the Frisian language, specifically the West Frisian language, which is one of the multiple Frisian languages that exist today. The Frisian language may be known to some of you who are into linguistics and historical linguistics as a language that is supposedly the closest relative to English, at least outside the British Isles. Of all its Germanic ancestors, the one that ended up closest to English would be Frisian. So people say Frisian is the closest living relative to English in continental Europe. And we're going to analyze that claim and see whether it's true or not, and whether it makes any sense and really makes any difference in learning Frisian. If somebody who speaks Frisian would have an easier time learning English, and vice versa, and so forth. The Frisian languages are spoken in what is now the northern Netherlands, including the Frisian Islands that we see on the map there, and in a few pockets in northern Germany, northwestern Germany. The northwestern Germany languages are very almost extinct. A few thousand people maybe speak those other Frisian languages. The West Frisian language is by far the most widely spoken of all the modern Frisian surviving modern Frisian languages. Western Frisian spoken in the northern Netherlands has almost 500,000 speakers, even though most of them do not use Frisian almost at all, because they use Dutch, essentially. Dutch and Frisian are co-official in the Netherlands. Few people know that. The Frisian is also an official language in the Kingdom of the Netherlands, but the prevalence of Dutch, which is derived from the old Franconian language, the old language of the Franks, of Charlemagne, which was spoken in Western Germany in antiquity. The Dutch language is by far the most predominant, the most dominant language in the Netherlands, and Frisian is spoken regionally. There have been efforts to revive the Frisian languages, but so far West Frisian is spoken maybe at home or in informal contexts in the northern Netherlands. For the most part, there's a few exceptions. There's a few people who use it in the press and print books in it, but it's really not common. The northern Frisian language spoken in the Jutland Peninsula in the state of Schleswig-Holstein in northern Germany only has about 10,000 speakers, but almost all of them are like passive speakers. They're not speakers and they're no longer actively using the language. They speak German as the active language in their daily lives. A few of them, maybe in the countryside, maybe still use it at home. The same goes for the Saterland Frisian language, which is spoken in northern Germany in the state of Low Saxony, not far from Hamburg and Bremerhaven. That language, actually, some people think it may even be extinct, and people who know it, people who are speakers of it, mostly are not active speakers anymore. They're just within Germany speaking German, maybe Low Saxon. So the thing is that English branched off what is now English. English is complicated. Nobody knows exactly how English formed, which is quite amazing for the language that is the most widely studied language in the world today. But English branched off mostly from the northern Germanic languages spoken across the North Sea in late antiquity, early medieval times. The Old Saxon language spoken in northern Germany, the Jettish language spoken in Jutland, of which very little is known, the Anglic language, which was also spoken in Jutland but further south, where now northern Frisian is spoken, Jettish, Anglic, and the Frisian itself. It was a federation, an expedition, a joint expedition with the Frisians, the northern Low Saxon, the Old Saxons of northern Germany, the Jutes, and the Angles, which invaded Britain in late antiquity, a few decades after the Roman Empire had left the British Isles. and they formed the old Anglo-Saxon language in the British Isles. So I'll talk about this in further detail when I make a video here on my channel, my English channel, about Old English and the history of the Germanic languages. But that's why Low Frisian as well as Low Saxon, the northern German language of Low Saxon, are considered the closest languages, the closest living relatives to English. But that makes very little sense. After some research here, I've discovered that even though English originally, Old English, Old Anglo-Saxon, was a close relative to Old Frisian and Old Saxon, modern English has diverged so much from its roots, has suffered so many influences from Latin languages, the Old Norman language, the medieval French dialects of Northern French that invaded Britain in the year 1066, and also the Scandinavian languages that invaded the British Isles multiple times and established the Danelaw period in the 800s before the Norman invasion. So all of these influences have made English diverge so much from its Anglo-Saxon roots that any similarity that Frisian might have had with English is essentially wiped out by modern by all of these differences, by modern differences. So we can say here, let's take a look at some of the words that are closer in Frisian and English than they are between, for example, Frisian and Dutch and German. They make Frisian and English closer together. Day is day in Frisian. Rain is rain. Nail is nail. Yielde is the verb to yield, to produce. Yarn is yarn. Yuster is yesterday. So that's, you see that Frisian tends to lose the final G sound. Dag, which is day in Dutch, becomes day, just like English. So there are a few similarities. It's still holding on until today. So you can see how the church is Kerke. So the final K of the language, which is in Dutch and German, still is a hard sound Kerk, and Kirche for church in Frisian is Kerke. Cherne, to churn. Cheese, which in Dutch is kaas, and German Käse. That word actually has a Latin origin, comes from Latin caseum, which was the word for cheese in Latin. And chaff, which is the chaff, as in to separate the wheat from the chaff, which in German and Dutch is kaf. So that's a palatalization. The palatalization is one of the things that Frisian shares with English. The change of hard sounds like K into CH sounds like Ka and Cha. That's something that Old Frisian shared with English over time. The loss of intermediate ends, like uns and ons, becomes us and s, us. And then there's no B, the N in the middle of the word disappeared. Guns, which is goose, also is goose. Or, other, under. Sliepe, sliepe, schlafen. Deed, deed, dad, the deed. Skiep, sheep, schap, schaf. I failed to find, however, any word that was exclusive other than the word kai, which is key. The key that you use to open a door, for example. That is the only word that I actually found in Frisian. I didn't look, of course, through all the words in Frisian, but I did. I tried to search through the vocabulary. The only word that I found that is shared only by Frisian and Dutch, by Frisian and English, I'm sorry, is kai and ki. The other words, sometimes they are closer together. They're closer in Frisian and English than they are between Frisian and Dutch or German, such as sweet. Sweet is sweet. In Dutch it's zoet, and in German it's süß. Wheat is wet, which is similar to Scandinavian. There might be a Scandinavian word, våt, in Swedish. Whereas in German and Dutch, they use a separate root for that, which is nat in Dutch and nas in German. The number of words that Frisian, however, shares with Dutch and English, with Dutch and German, but not with English, is enormous. So Frisian remains far closer to Dutch and to German than it is to English. There's a lot of words that Frisian shares only with Dutch and German, and that are completely separate and different in English. This is one of the lists that I could go on with, perhaps hundreds of words. Zwier, which is heavy. in Dutch it's zwaar, and German schwer. Slange, snakke, slang, schlange. Wortel, root, wortel, Wurzel. Groot, big, groot, gross. Vogel, bird, but it's also related to fowl. But the word bird itself doesn't, which is a very English word. It has no other Germanic cognates. However, it's shared with Vogel in Dutch and Vogel in German. Hoed is skin, but English also has hide in the meaning of skin, right? In German, it's Haut. In Dutch, it's Huid. Wolk is cloud, a cloud in the sky. German, Wolke, Dutch Wolk. Blom, flower, bloem, bloemen. Hibel is the sky, Hemel, Himmel. There are some words that are uniquely Frisian, either because they really only exist in Frisian, or because they have a separate meaning in Frisian, or because the relative that they have in other languages is unusual and little used, or means something completely different. For example, holle is head. Holle, my head. Hate is father. Who'd have thunk that? That's a weird word for father. Hate is actually related to ata, which is an old Germanic word for father. Probably related also to the Slavic otec. Hate, okay? Hate is father. Mem is mother. Famke, which is of neutral gender, it famke, is a girl. Guon is the quantifier some, a few. Bern is a child, which is actually Scandinavian. It shares with Danish and Swedish barn. Barn in Scandinavian language means a child. But in English, other than dialect of Scottish English and German and Dutch, there is no cognate. Lutz means small. Of course, it's probably related to little. That means small. In Dutch and English, in Dutch and German, they have klein, which is related to clean. In English, klein is small. Tusk is tooth, the tooth. Vjuk is a wing, which is wing in English. Vleugel in Dutch and Flügel in German. Min is bad, maybe related to mean in English. He's a mean guy, has a mean character. But it's in the meaning of bad, not only mean, but also in a general bad thing, low quality thing, like schlecht in German. And the leg is the skunk. Skunk is your leg, which is also a very English word, leg. There's no relationship between leg and other Germanic languages. There's no cognate of leg in other Germanic languages, as far as I know. And that word is bein and bein in German, which is related to bone in English. So you can see here that however many similarities might have existed and still exist in a small number between Frisian and English, Frisian shares way more with Dutch and German than it does with English. There's no comparison. If you speak English, you will not understand anything in Frisian. But if you speak Dutch and German, you may catch up on with a little bit of an introduction. You may, in a short while, have a big advantage in learning Frisian. We can see here the pronouns are the personal indexators in West Frisian. Very Dutch-like or Germanic in general. Ik, do, or yo. Yo, like you in English, is the formal plural word, which also became polite. Originally, you or ye in English was only the plural, right? and it jumped to singular because of its polite use. Hey or say, or hia, which is akin to Old English, like very similar to Old English. The word for she in Old Saxon was also hea, or something like that, with an age at the beginning. We don't know where she came from exactly. Probably related to say, which is the Dutch and Frisian word for she. We, yime, and say or ja, also for the plural. The object, mij, me, they, thee, him, haar, it, us, im, haar. And the possessors, mijn, deen, zijn, haar, zijn, us, im, haar. Before we move on, do not forget to get to know my Intuitionary. Okay, if you like comparing vocabulary between languages, if you're learning multiple languages, or even if you're learning one language, just one foreign language, go on to www.theintuitionary.com, which is the multilingual, thematic, intelligent, intuitive, customizable, multi-language, as I said, multi-language, multiple language dictionaries, where you can align the vocabulary of multiple languages and learn the vocabulary of multiple languages in parallel. As you choose, you can choose the order of language that you want, and the vocabulary is organized by themes and by roots. Okay, so if you go on to a word like cold, you'll find a cold, to chill, to cool down, refrigeration, hot, heat, calefaction, to heat up, to warm up. All the words that are related to a certain root, usually its opposites, are listed along with a certain word. Like I said, there's bright and there's dark. There's heavy and there's light. If there's heavy, there's also, how do you say weight? How do you say lightness? How do you say to make something heavier? To make something lighter? To lighten something up. And you can choose and navigate on the menu also by categories, and can search by languages. And you can also configure the color of the dictionary, change the order of languages. You can essentially create your own dictionary. And many of the entries have these pop-up windows. When you float the mouse arrow on a certain word, if there's further information about that word, a pop-up window will show up and give you, for example, the conjugation of a verb, or tips on how to use a verb, or examples of how to use a certain verb, or other words that are derived from the same root, or certain tips against, be careful, do not use that word in a given context, because the usage of this word is a little problematic in that language. There's a lot of information that you typically do not find in a dictionary online. So go to theintuitionary.com. Okay, you won't regret it. It's probably the only dictionary that is any good for people who are learning multiple languages. Here we find the numbers. No big surprise there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and so on. The word for 80 is very parallel with Dutch. In Dutch, there's this initial T that was added to the word. The word for 80 would be 80 in Dutch, but it's 80 for some reason. 80, 80. In German, it's 80, there's no T. In English, it's 80, it's not 80. But in Frisian and in Dutch, you find 80. Here are the ordinal numbers. Eerste, voorste, tweede, orde, trede, trede, vierde, vijfde, sexte, secte, zande, achtste, negende. Frisian has an abundance of irregular plurals. Okay, in addition to being a gendered language, unlike English, which lost gender, Frisian still retains a system like that of Dutch. There's the de words. De is the definite article for the common gender words, which derives from a fusion of masculine and feminine in the past, and the neuter gender words, which have the definite article it. So it bairn is the child. The plural is de bairn. The plural article is de for everybody, even neutral nouns. Skeep, skeep, doesn't change. Bairn, skeep, which is sheep, doesn't change. Koe, which is cow, changes to ki. Skoich becomes skoon. They, dagen. Way, wagon. Lead, laden. That's like Dutch. Alder, alden. Man, manliu. That's weird. Man, the plural of man in Frisian is manliu. What's this liu? Maybe it comes from liud, like loiter. Man, loiter. Which is like, in Old Germanic would be lud. Lud. Man, lud. Frau, lud. Also Frau, lud. Man. Maybe the Frau, loiter. Like lui is the word for loiter in Dutch. It could be. There's this lui is a loiter. Some of the family members, like I said, height is the father, the height. The paka is the grandfather. Here I translate to English and Dutch. Mem is the mother. The bep is the grandmother, the grandmother. Dochter is the daughter. Son is the son. Zuster is the sister. And broer is the brewer. You can see the similarity with English is big, but the similarity with Dutch, is even bigger. Wezen. That's the verb to be. In Old Saxon, in Old Anglo-Saxon, it would be the word, I think it's wezen. So in the present and in the past, you have ik bin, du bist, he is. Wir bine, ime bine, hia bine. You see, in the plural, there is only one form, just like Old English. And actually, modern Old Saxon was like this. That's why the Saxon of Germany, the plural persons were all the same. And in the past, it's funny that it lost its S in the end. There's no S or R. So you can say wie, ik wie, I was. Du wist, thou wert or thou wast. He wie, he was. In the plural, venian, we venian, we were. And so on. The past participle is west. And the auxiliary verb used to form composite tenses with the verb weze is have, the verb have, not the verb to be, like what happens in German and Dutch. The verb to be is helped by itself. The verb to be, just like also Italian. This is what happens in French, actually. In French, the verb être is auxiliated by the verb avoir and not être. Then the verb to have, ik ha, du hast, he ha, we have, ik hi, ik histe, ik hi, we hine, je me hine, ja hinen, have han. The verb to give is jan. This is another thing that actually would match with English if it wasn't for the fact that English lost its original verb to give, and the verb to give in English that we have today in English is a Scandinavian loan, because English lost the initial G sounds. Just like you have German Garten, but you have English yard. You have German Gelten, but you have English yield. You have a German Gestern or Dutch Gisteren, and you have a Frisian and English yesterday. So many initial G's were lost. The same happened with the verb to give in English. But that original Saxon verb to give that lost it became yiv, or yivan. It was replaced by its Scandinavian sibling, and the G was imported back into English by that process. If it hadn't happened, if the Scandinavian invasion hadn't happened in Britain, then we might have in English something closer to yan or yen as a verb to, or ya or something like this, as a verb to go in modern English, but we don't. So see, the conjugation is quite irregular even in the present here in Frisian. Ik jo, do jo, he jo, we jove, je me jove, ha jove. The past joog, jochts, joch, jogen, and so on. Another thing that doesn't match with English at all, but matches fully with Dutch and German, is the verb to know. The verb to know is a Germanic verb that only exists in English. It's related to the verb cognoscere of Latin, the verb gnosko, or of Greek, or the verb žnja, which is the verb to know in Sanskrit, or the verb znać, which is the verb to know in the Slavic languages like Russian and Polish. But it doesn't have any, other than English, no other language retained that root, the Indo-European root, in Germanic. So the other Germanic languages, Scandinavian languages, Dutch, German, they use a verb related to wit, to wisdom, to wise, which is witten. In Frisian, it's wissen in German. In the present, ik wit, du witst, je wit, we weten, and so on. The past, ik wist, du wist, and so on. Voerke is a case of a regular verb. Some verbs have that je ending, and they are a category of verbs in Frisian, in West Frisian. Ik voerke, du voerkest, hij voerket, we voerke, je me voerke, ja voerke. The past, they don't receive a T, a dental suffix that is so typical of all Germanic languages from the past. In Frisian, that doesn't happen with this category of verbs, at least. Ik voerke, I worked, which in Dutch would be ik werkte. Ik werkte. There is no T or D to mark the past in this case, in this category. This is very strange. This is uniquely Frisian. Maybe some other regional language that I don't know of does that. For a weak verb, for a regular weak verb, that's quite unusual. Meenen, which is to mean, or to think. In this case, it does get a D in the past. Ik meen, ik meende. I meant, I mean, I meant. So in this case, ik meen, du meenst, hij meent. This category of verb is the most typical verb in Frisian, and it does receive a dental suffix in the past. Modal verbs, seal is like the shall of Old English. It forms the future. Or Dutch, like the zal of Dutch. It's, ik zal werken. I will work, I shall work. Hij kan werken, he can work. That's kan. Kan is can. Wij moeten werken. We must, we have to work. The noun phrase. The adjective, just like happens in Dutch, similar to what happens in Scandinavian and Danish and German, may receive a e sound if it's like a plural or definite adjective inside the attribute noun phrase. So in groot huis is a big house. In grote man is a large man. In this case, this is unlike Dutch, because in Dutch there would get an a there, would it? Een grote man, that will happen. But in Danish and Swedish not. It grote huis. The definite article also makes the adjective gain an e. It grote huis. This is the neuter gender. It huis is the house. De grote man, de grote huizen, which is the big houses, and de grote mannen, the big man. Even though this source says man, mannen is the plural of man, but we did say manliu. I don't know which is correct, okay? Dit luidse boek. The small book. This small book. Diese luidse boekjes. These small books. Diese luidse hand. This small hand. Diese luidse handen. These small hands. Hij had in een huis werken. I put the Dutch equivalent there. Hij heeft in het huis gewerkt. He has worked in the house. Hij is op een vlier gevallen. You notice that unlike German and Dutch, the past participle in Frisian does not get the automatic prefix ge if the verb has no prefix. So in Dutch you have hij is op de vlier gevallen. Gevallen in Dutch, gevallen in German is the past participle of the verb to fall. In Frisian only fallen. Hij is fallen. Hij is fallen. He is fallen. He has fallen. Hij is op de vlier gevallen. Fallen. Ik denk dat hij in het huis werkt had. Like German and unlike Dutch, the auxiliary verb jumps all the way to the end in the subordinate clause. So I think that he worked in the house. will make the hat, the auxiliary verb, jump all the way to the end. In Dutch, the verb jumps to the penultimate position. It doesn't cross the boundary of the past participle. Just like we have there in the Dutch translation under ik denk dat hij in het huis heeft gewerkt. Ze zeiden dat op het vlier gevallen is. Of vlier gevallen is. Ze zeiden dat hij op de grond is gevallen. In Dutch you say op de grond is gevallen. In Frisian you say op het vlier gevallen is. So the order of words in the subordinate clause is closer to that of German and not Dutch. And completely different from English. Ik vechte om mensen te bevrijden. I fought to free people. Ik vecht om mensen te bevrijden. That's the Dutch. Ich kämpfe dafür, Menschen zu befreien. So you see that the syntax is also very continental Germanic, very aligned with Dutch and German, and has very little to do with English in that case. Wir werden trotz hem reden. Wir werden trotz hem reden. You see that the past participle of certain verbs is identical to the infinitive. That happens in German as well. Have you ever seen stuff like that? Ich hab ihn sprechen hören. Probably German had this old past participle that was identical to the infinitive, which only survives with a few multiple verb constructions. Ich hab ihn essen sehen. Ich hab ihn die Tür öffnen lassen. Wir werden durch ihn gerettet. Wir wurden durch ihn gerettet. The verb retten is to save. We were saved by him. So the passive voice in Frisian is made in a similar way to Dutch and German. Use the verb werden and not the verb to be, as in English, which is like more a copy of the Romance paradigm found in French and Spanish and Italian. So I hope that gave you a good overview of what Frisian is like, one of the most obscure Western European languages. It's spoken right there in the Netherlands. It's there for the world to see. Very few people ever talk about it, and the resources on Frisian are not that many. And as to the original question, is Frisian indeed the closest living relative to English? Maybe in a very historical sense, due to a few sound shifts that are only shared by Frisian and very old England, a very old layer of English words. I could say that maybe yes, but that doesn't make the slightest difference, because that similarity was only valid between Frisian and the old Anglo-Saxon language, and a few of the old Anglo-Saxon words that happen to still have survived more or less intact into modern English. Most of Frisian aligns way more with Dutch and German than it does with English. So you're gonna have to wait until I make a video on Scots, the obscure, lost twin brother of English that is spoken in Scotland. It's not the Gaelic the Celtic language. I'm talking about the Germanic language that evolved alongside English in Scotland for a while, and still is spoken, even though it's considered like a bastardized dialect of English, but it's not. It's a separate language. That indeed is the closest living relative to English. It's a billion times more closer to English than Frisian is, because it evolved right there in the British Isles. And I'm gonna make a video on it. I'll make videos on all Germanic languages, of course. So stay tuned in the channel. Subscribe. Leave your comment below. Visit the Intuitionary.com, my online dictionary, and let me know in the comment section which languages or which linguistic subject, which area of linguistics, or which questions regarding linguistics or any related fields you'd like to see a video on this channel anytime soon. And don't forget to, as I said, subscribe, and also activate the little bell under the video that allows you to receive notifications when the channel uploads a new video, which is I don't upload that many videos, but when they come, they are very densely researched, and if you're into linguistics, you are likely to enjoy them a lot. Okay, bye bye.